Okay. So the Gemara had a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. Rav holds that the denial has to be shtei kesef, and the admission has to be a pruta, which means the total claim has to be shtei kesef plus one pruta. Shmuel held the claim only has to be for shtei kesef, and the denial could be anywhere between a pruta and one pruta less than shtei kesef. And the same goes with the concession, with what the respondent conceded. So the Gemara is bringing rayas back and forth to Rav or to Shmuel. So Tashma, dinar zahuv yesh libiyotcha. Now we learned yesterday that if you learn like Rav, then most of the Mishnah is speaking b'shaveh. So in the first case where it said shtei mos yomi, it was a case of the value of shtei mois, but according to, it was the value. That's right. But according to Shmuel, it meant exactly shtei mois, and based on that, Shmuel's shita came out in the Mishnah, and Rav's shita came out in the Mishnah. There was one exception to that rule, and that was the case of the Mishnah where it says litra zav or litra kesef. There, everybody agrees it means the shava, not the actual gold bar or silver bar. Okay, so based on that, the Gemara says Toshma dinar zav v'yesh libiyotcha. What does that mean? A dinar of gold that was zav, that was actually minted. So in this case, the Brisa speaks out that it was minted, and then the Loiva answers back, Ein loch biyodi el a dinar kesef. I only owe you a dinar kesef. There it's chayiv. Why? Timer the omelei zahuv zahuv. Zahav zahuv. The only reason why it's chayiv is because he said zahav zahuv, because it was minted, and there was a matbeya that you're talking about. Hastama, if he would have just said plain zahav, shavaka omelei, we would have said that what it means is shaveh, which supports Rav Shita, who learns that it's shaveh. Zok Rashi, dinar zahav zahav yesh li biyodcha, ein lach biyodi el dinar kesef, upirish dinar zahav hainu tovu. It's minted. The taima mishum da koil min matbeya echad. That this brisa is using the same svara as the case in our Mishnah, that when we're talking about coins, we consider that all mimin echad, v'havalei mimin atayna. However, it still will support Rav Shita of how he understood our Mishnah. Since the Brisa, in order to be talking about a case where it's not just a bar of gold versus a bar of silver, rather it's minted, it's a coin, the Brisa had to speak out that it was zahuv, it was minted. Michlal, it would be mashma that unless the case contains that extra word of zahuv, we're not speaking about minted. We're just speaking about bars of gold versus balls of silver. Therefore, michlal demastis in the tan dinar zahuv stama shava ka'amar. It means the value of it. V'shakoyel din matbeya echad katani, and it says in our Mishnah v'shakoyel din matbeya echad. Umi the seifa shava, if the seifa is referring to just the value of it, Reish Nami shava, it would make sense that the whole Mishnah was speaking in that same scenario where we're not talking about the actual coin, rather we're talking about the value that it brings. We're not talking about the actual gold, rather the value of that gold, the value of the silver. Meaning, there's no problem in the entire Mishnah of Tanach Bechitin, and going back to the Gemara's original kasha, and the Katani Reisha, the very first halacha in the Mishnah, is Shtei Kesef Yesh Li Biyotcha, Ein Lech Biyodi Ela Pruta. And again, that is speaking by a case of Shava, meaning I'm not actually saying you owe me silver, and then the respondent says, I only owe you a Pruta. Rather, the plaintiff is saying, you owe me the value of Shtei Kesef, and the respondent says, I owe you the value of a Pruta, which means the Hida will be Ke'ena Taina, yet the Mishnah still says Potter. The only explanation as to why there shouldn't be a Shavuos Moedim Mitzvahs here is Mishum Deleka Kfir Shtei Kesef. It's because the Kfir has to be Shtei Kesef, and in this case, in the first case of the Mishnah, there was not such a Kfir. So we're back to the original kasha that the Gemara asked on Shmuel from the Reisha, but now we have a little bit of a raya that the Mishnah must be referring to Shova, because if it was actually talking about the Batbeis, it would say Zahu. Zok to Gemara, it's not a raya. Amar Bashi, Hachi Kamar. This is what the Brisa means when it says Zahav Zahav. It means Kol ha'omer dinar Zahav, Kol ha'omer dinar Zahav Zahav Dami. What it means to say is the Brisa is not saying that the Tviyah was actually articulating Zahav Zahav. It's just Zahav, but by default, Zahav means Zahav. We always assume it means that it's minted. Zok Rashi, Hachi Kamar Kol ha'omer dinar Zahav, Kol ha'omer Zahav Zahav Dami. Ubraisa loisha toin mefarish zahav zahav kamar. The Brisa wasn't referring to a case where the claimant actually said those words zahav zahav. Elhachi kamar. What really happened was hatoyin dinar zahav stam. If someone just makes a claim of a dinar zahav, we understand what he means to say as the mistama zahav zahav kamar. That's what it normally means. And therefore, that's what it could mean in our Mishnah as well. And therefore, our Mishnah does not have to be interpreted b'shaveh. It could be speaking about the actual gold. And the respondent said, Ein lech biyadi ela dinar kesef. The haninami dinar matbeya. And when we're talking about matbeyas, Shmuel understood in our Mishnah, according to Rabbi Elazar earlier, that it's all called one min as long as we're talking about currencies. The yesh naida miminataina. And that's why it would be chayiv, because they're all coins, and Rabbi Elazar was machadish that when they're all coins, we look at it like it's all mimin echad. Tani Rab Chia l'siyur l'Rab. Rab Chia quoted a brisa that in fact was a support to Rav Shita. Again, what is Rav Shita? That the haidah has to be a pruta, the denial has to be shtei kesef, which means the original claim had to be a minimum of shtei kesef plus a pruta. What is Reb Chia's brisa? Sela li biyotcha. You owe me a sela. Ein loch biyodi ela sela chosar beis kesef. I'm denying beis kesef. Chayiv. But chosar ma, if I'm only denying one ma, then I'm potter. So you clearly see from this brisa that the denial has to be beis kesef. So this is a support to Rav's position. Amr of Nachman, now this very much sounds like we paskin like Rav, because Reb Chia brought a brisa to support him. Amr of Nachman by Yitzchak, Amr Shmuel, Lo Shanu ela b'tainas malva v'oidos loiva. This discussion of the minimum amount of money that this question is relevant to is a ma cost is a shtei mois and a pruta, and the denial has to be shtei mois according to Rav or according to Shmuel. The minimum play has to be tamois. That's only the gabbai shayla of Shavuos Moedim b'mitzvahs. But there's another place where a Shavuot deraisa is demanded from the loiva. And where is that other place? That other place is by an eirechot. So aval tainas malva v'hados eirechot. But if it was a case of an eirechot, it does not have any of these restrictions. Afilu lo itanoi ela bepruta chayiv. Even if the whole discussion is a pruta, there would still be a chiyuv shvua. The halachas of the minimum amounts are only relevant to the shayla of moedim miktas, not to the chiyuv shvua that would be imposed on the loiva if there was an eirechot. My time, and what is the reasoning for this? Tichsiv lo yakum eid echad beish l'chalavan u'l'chal chatas. An eid echad cannot accomplish oven and chatas. In other words, he can't bring malchus to somebody or Mrs. Bezdin to somebody with an eid echad. And we are medayik. The Torah is specific where an eid echad is ineffective. It's only l'chal oven u'l'chal chatas who they come. Avol kamu l'shvua. An eid echad could bring a shvua. Utna v'tanya we learned Any scenario where if there were two Eidim, it would be mechayiv the defendant to pay. Now, if I bring two Eidim and it says that you owe me a pruta, you have to pay me a pruta. So therefore, if I bring a Neid Echad that you owe me a pruta, you would have to swear about that pruta. Let's see Rashi. Lo yishanu deboy tainish tekesef ela b'shvua haba b'tainis malva v'oidos mitzvahs taloiva. That's when we have these limited restrictions depending on the value of the case. Al b'shvua be'edus eid echad shaloiva kafar akoil. The loiva is kafar akoil. The eid echad me'idoy shu chayiv, and the eid echad says that he's chayiv. And that creates a chiyuv shvua. Even if the whole discussion is about one simple pruta, there would still be a chiyuv to swear. That if there were two edim saying that you owe me a pruta, they would be chayiv to pay. Koshav pruta is considered money. Therefore, if there's only one eid, it would be mechayiv the defendant to shvur. What if the malva or the claimant said, you owe me a bushel of chitin and you owe me a bushel of saharim? And the respondent was I owe you chitin, but I don't owe you saharim. So is that called a moide b'mitzvah or not? So the halacha is chayiv. So Reb Nachman Amishul said it's chayiv. That is called moide b'mitzvahs, because your claim was chitin and sa'irin, and on the chitin part, I was moide completely, but on the whole claim, I was moide partial. Amr Reb Yitzchak Yiyasher, I agree. I think you're right, and not only that, v'chein Amr Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan also agrees to this halacha. Now, we had a very similar halacha to this in the Mishnah. Right? In the Mishnah, we had a case of Tanoi Kadei Shemen. The Reuben tells Shimon, the claimant says, you owe me 10 barrels of oil. And the respondent answers, I have Kanem. I have empty jugs. So that Pashtus is the same question as this, because I'm demanding two things. I'm demanding oil and I'm demanding jugs, and you're conceding on the jugs. Right? No, but still two separate items. But there's definitely a difference, because otherwise, what Chiddush is Rav Nachman saying in the name of Shmuel, if Admoin already says this in the Mishnah, right? And the Mishnah quoted in the name of Admoin this halacha, and Rav Gamliel says, I agree with what Admoin said. But Tosfos says that there's more involved in the Admoin case, because could be the case was where you came to me and you say you owe me 10 jugs of oil. I respond that I have jugs, but the Tosfos learns, what did I respond? How many jugs do I have? I respond that I only have 5 jugs. So there's a moed b'mitzvahs on the jugs itself. There's a shaila if he even has to give the jugs that he's moed to. But whatever the case is, he was denying the oil. He was conceding on the jugs. Was he conceding on all the jugs? So there's no moed b'mitzvahs on the jugs, and there's no moed b'mitzvahs on the oil. Or maybe he was only conceding on part of the jugs. That's what Tosfos says. There's 2 prongs. There's 2 issues over there. Here it's only Tanu Chitin v'Sayin l'Haydloi v'Echadim. So Reb Nachman Amar Shmuel said this qualifies as moed b'mitzvahs, and Rabbi Yitzchak quoted that Rabbi Yochanan said the same thing. Michlal, the pligal Reish Lakish. Normally, if you quote something in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the assumption is that his bar plukte Reish Lakish would have disagreed. Now the question is, he said Michlal the Polagalei Reish Lakish, right? So Rashi says, who's saying this? Boyahu the Kaboy Gemara. The Gemara wasn't sure, because the Gemara has Rabbi Yitzchak quoting Rabbi Yochanan, but not saying anything about Reish Lakish. So the Gemara wants to know, Lema midika Amar v'chein Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mechlal the Polagalei Bar Plukte. Maybe we can make that assumption. Zok Gemara Ikad Amri Misha Havashoyle V'Shosekle. You know why the Gemara didn't know? Because whoever was there, let's say Rabbi Yitzchak was there and heard Rabbi Yochanan say this. Now, while Rabbi Yochanan was speaking, Reish Lakish did not interrupt, because Reish Lakish had a policy that I wait till whoever is speaking completely finishes their entire shir. He wouldn't hack in the middle of shir, and then only after shir would he mention his dissenting opinion. But Rabbi Yitzchak had to leave right after shir, so he wasn't there. He wasn't there to see whether or not Reish Lakish argued on it. Ikadamri mishta havashasile. It's not like Reish Lakish wouldn't have interrupted the middle to voice his objection. Rather, he was in the middle of drinking, and that's why he couldn't speak. And by the time Reish Lakish finished drinking, Rabbi Yitzchak was gone. So again, we didn't know if Reish Lakish disagreed with what Rabbi Yochanan said or not. So v'ikadami mishta v'shasi v'shasifle. Lema Messiah. Let's see if we can bring a raya to this halacha. That tanu chitin usahirin v'hoydaloi be'echad behen. That's called moed b'mitzvos. Dr. Gemara. Tanu chitin v'hoydaloi b'sahirin potter. Rabbi Gamliel Machayev. So the machloek is quoted in our Mishnah if tanu chitin v'hoydaloi b'sahirin. Taima the tanu chitin v'hoydaloi b'sahirin. The only reason why our Mishnah says that it's potter from a shvuah is because I was moida on something that had nothing to do with what your claim was. But if it was a case where you were asking for two things and I was moida on one of the two, chayiv. Because if not, then the Mishnah should have said a bigger chiddush that even tanuchitin usarid v'hoydaloi be'echad man is potter. It doesn't say that. Mashma would be chayiv. That's very strong support to what we just quoted from Rabbi Yochanan. You don't have a right. Maybe huadin tafilu chitin usarin nami potter. Maybe even in the case of tanu chitin usarin v'hoydaloi b'sayin, maybe that would also be potter. So why didn't the Mishnah quote that case, which would have expressed a larger finish? The high the kabivli bechitin is like the achad koicha to the Ragamliel. We want to highlight Rabbi Gamliel's chiddush. Rabbi Gamliel said that even in this case, you're chayiv. So what's a bigger chiddush? That tanu bechitin usayin v'hoydaloi be'echad behen is chayiv? No, it's a much bigger chiddush of tanu chitin only, v'hoydaloi b'sayin only, which the Haidah is not an amr in Ataina, that even over there, you're chayiv a shvuah, and that is Rabbi Gamliel, and that's why the Mishnah picked this case, because it wanted to highlight the halacha of Rabbi Gamliel. Now we know there's a rule that whenever the Mishnah has a choice of highlighting a chiddush, it will always choose to highlight koicha de teira, the kula. So let's think to ourselves: what is a bigger kula? Is it a bigger kula to swear, or is it a bigger kula not to swear? I would say it's a bigger kula not to swear, but yet our Gemara here decided to highlight the chiddush of Rabbi Gamliel, where you do have to swear, right? So Rashi, Tosfos comments on that. And Tosfos says, "Well, the koichei odif. Why is it better? The milsa de rabbanon have a koyach teptur. When you're talking about mominus, it's a bigger chiddush to be mechayiv somebody to pay than it is to say leave things the way they are. So the chachamim hold in this case, since I don't have to swear, the respondent is potter. That's default, like going to the mochsa, leave everything where it is. While Rabbi Gamliel shakes things up and he says that the respondent will either have to swear or pay. Tashma, Tanu Kalim, Vikarkois. Again, the case of our Mishnah. The claimant said, you owe me Kalim and Karkois. Hoide Bekalim, Vikafer Bikarkois, or Hoide Bikarkois, Vikafer Bekalim. The lach is potter, this will not be Mechayiv, Ashvus Moed B'Miktas. And if you remember, that was because anytime there's a question of karka involved, there's no chiyuv shvuah. Hoide b'mitzvahs karkais. But what if you were moed b'mitzvah of the karka itself? Again, potter, because a shvuas moed b'mitzvahs does not apply to karka. But if you were hoide b'mitzvahs kalim on something that is a metaltal, and therefore you do make a shvuas moed b'mitzvahs on it, chayiv, you'll be chayiv because of the moed b'mitzvahs on the kalim. You can cut the karka out of here. Just look at the small component of this discussion where there's a hodah mixed on the kalim. And then the Mishnah says, once you swear a shvuas mixed on the kalim, ayidei gilgal, we can force you to swear for the karka as well. So let's analyze this this halacha in the Mishnah. Time of the kelim v'karkois. The reason why we don't swear is because it's kelim and karkois, and the karka lav bashvuh, and karka is something that you don't swear on. Ha kelim v'kelim. But what if it was a case of kelim v'kelim, dumya the kelim v'karkois? What if the case would have been two types of kelim? I'm owning you pots and I'm owning you pans, and you're molded to the pans. It would be chayiv, right? The only reason why in the case of the Mishnah it's not chayiv is because one of the components of the discussion was karka. But if both of the components of the discussion were metaltlin, were things that are in the category of shvuah, but I was telling you one and you were molded on the other, it would be chayiv. So once again, you have a raya that tanu pots and pans, the hoide of pans, it would be chayiv shvuah moed b'mitzvos, which is the same case as tanu chitnu sorin v'hoide loy bechad mehen. How can you use what?
I think you just use the term kalim.
Right. It's davar metaltal the gufim moment. It could be anything. That's right. But it's mobile and it has intrinsic value. And that it could actually be anything.
Okay.
From a needle to a tank. Zog to Gemara, hu adin, da'afilu kalim u'kalim nami potter. No, you don't have a raya to what Rabbi Yochanan said. Maybe it would be potter because it's tanoi chitnu sorin v'hoid lebechad. So then why did the Mishnah chap in the case of kalim and karkois? Ba'adar getoni kalim v'karkois kamash malon to tell you a side halach. The chihoide b'mitzas kalim chayiv afala karkois to tell us the chiddush of Gilgal Shvuah that you wouldn't have known by kalim and kalim. Here we get an extra piece of information that once you're mechuyev the shvuah l'moed b'mitzas on the kalim al yidei Gilgal, we can also demand a shvuah from the respondent on the karka. Again, are you telling me that the chiddush that our Mishnah here is teaching us is the chiddush of Gilgal Shvuah? There's a Mishnah about it in Maseches Kedushin. Tanina, zoik again es anachosim sheyesh la machbayis lishav alei. Zok to Gemara. True, there is a Mishnah in Kedushin that says this, but ha'ikar here is the main discussion of Gilgal Shvuah, and this is where the halacha belongs. So you can't ask me Akasha why it's here. Hahi. So then you could ask me, so why is it in Kedushin if it's here already? If this is the main case of where it should be discussed, Hasam agav grora nas. Since the Mishnah in Kedushin is talking about kinyan agav, that when you're koina karka, you can be koina agav the karka, you can be koina metaltlin. So it throws in another example of a case where they're connected to each other. But this here is the main sugya. Now we're going to have a very easy Gemara because we're about to learn the exact same Gemara that we just learned, but from the opposite perspective. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Tanu chitin and sorin, there would be a chiyuv shvuas moed b'mitzvos." But for Rabbi Bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan, "Tanu chitin and sorin v'hoidle bechad men" is potter. So now all the rayas that we brought a moment ago to Rabbi Yochanan, we're going to ask now as a kasha to Rabbi Chia. And we're going to answer them, we're going to deflect them the same way we just deflected them. Frankly, Gemara, number one, the Amr Rabbi Yitzchak Yasher, the Chein Amr Rabbi Yochanan. How could Rabbi Chia say to them, Rabbi Yochanan, that it's potter when Rabbi Yitzchak just said that Rabbi Yochanan said that it's chayiv? Zok Gemara, that's not a shrekheit. I'm a roy ninu, I'll leave it Rabbi Yochanan. There's a machlokes between Rabbi Chia bar Abba and Rabbi Yitzchak, what Rabbi Yochanan said. And Rabbi Chia bar Abba heard that what Rabbi Yochanan said was that it would be potter. Tashma, Tanu Chitin Vaidle B'Siren, Potter, Rabbi Gamliel Machayev. Time of the Tanu Chitin Vaidle B'Siren. Ha Chitin B'Siren, Vaidle B'Echad Ben, it would be Chayev. This is Shver Ad Rabbi Chia. So the same thing that we brought a riot to Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yochanan, we're asking the same kasha. So the Gemara answered the same terms. Hu adin dafilu Chitin B'Siren Nami Potter. V'Haydek Atani Hacha, Lo Diacha Koicha Der Gamliel. Tashma, again, what we had earlier as a raya, we're now going to use as a kasha. Tashma, tanu kelim v'karkois, v'hoide b'kelim, v'cover b'karkois, or b'karkois v'cover b'kelim, potter. But hoide b'mitzas karka is potter, but b'mitzas kelim is chayiv. And the same deal. Time with the kelim v'karkois, the karka lav bash v'hi. Ha kelim u'kelim, dumya the kelim v'karkois, it would be chayiv. So you have a raya to Rabbi Chia. This was a kasha. I'm sorry. This is a kasha on Rabbi Chia because Rabbi Chia here said potter while Rabbi Yitzchak on Amar Aleph said Chayit. So Dr. You don't have a raya. Who I did afilu kelim nami potter. The hakamash malon. The chiddush over here is the Haydim Mixas Kalim Chayiv Afalaka Goys, which is the chiddush of Gilgal Shvua. My Kamash Long Fact the Mara Zoikikin. The chiddush is Gilgal Shvua. We already have a Mishnah in Kedushin Tanina Zoikinis and the Chosim Sheish Lo Nachrayis Lishav Aleim. So Gemara Ha'ikr. Here in our Gemara and Shavuos is the main sugya of Shavuos, and this is where we discuss the concept of Gilgal Shvua. But Ahi, where it's mentioned in Kedushin Agav Gerara Nasva. It's only mentioned there because the Mishnah is talking about something similar. Now we have a new kasha that we didn't bring earlier. To'anu shar. The claimant says, you owe me an ox. And the respondent said, no, I only owe you a sheep. Or the opposite. The halacha is potter. The halacha is that he's potter for making a shvur. That's Tanu Chitin V'Ha'id B'Shar. But Tanu B'Shar Visa. What if the claim was both the Shar and the Seh? V'Ha'id B'Echad Mem Chayiv. So this clearly is saying not like Reb Chia, because it says Chayiv. Reb Chia holds potter in this case. Amar Lei, don't ask me a kasha on that price. Ha Mani Rabbi Gamliel. That's going according to Rabbi Gamliel, who says that Tanu B'Chitin V'Ha'id B'Shar, you make a shvur anyway. How could you possibly say that? Rabbi Gamliel, Afila Reisha Nami. In the Reisha, where you were demanding for me a shar, and I agreed to a set, there this brisa that we just quoted says that you're potter from a shvur. According to Rabbi Gamliel, you would be chayiv in a shvur. Ela Hamani Admoni. Let's say that this brisa is going according to Admon, because Admon said that if I'm asking for oil and for jugs, and the moida on the jugs, there'll be a chayiv shvur. So this is going according to Abmoin. We're discussing according to everybody else. And don't think, sure, he's pushing me off. He's blaming it on Abmoin. I'm not just saying this to get out of your kasha. It's a legit answer that this brisa is the sheet of Admon. Rabbi Yochanan, many times when he learned this brisa of Shor and Seh, he used to tell us Hamani Admoni. So I'm not just coming up with this to get out of your kasha. Rabbi Yochanan said many times when he taught us this Mishnah or this Brisa that this was the Shita of Adam. Amar Rav Anan, Amar Shmuel. Tanu Chitin, V'Kadam, V'Hoiduloi B'Sayin. Now we have a variation of the cases we were discussing. The claimant said, you owe me a bushel of Chitin. And what happened was, he said, I owe you Sa'irim. V'Kadam, V'Hoiduloi B'Sayin. I owe you Sa'irim. Why did he do that? He might have done it because it's true, and he's just sincere, and he wants to agree that he owes that. And if that's the case, according to the Chachamim, it's Tanachit and Vaid Lebesayin, and I'm not Chayav B'Shua, right? Only according to Rabbi Gamliel would I be Chayav B'Shua here, but not according to Gamliel, I'll be Potter. But what if the reason why I said it is because I'm afraid that you're going to add to your claim Soirin, so now you're Tanachit Nu Soirin, and I'm Haidloi B'Soirin. So now, according to one sheet in Rabbi Yochanan, according to Admon, I'll be Chayav B'Shua. So I don't want that to happen. So I quickly am moida about the Soirin to take that out of the discussion, to take that off the table, and therefore you won't be able to bring me to a Shavuos Moida B'Mitzvahs. So therefore, Zok Shmuel, Im Kamayrim, if you could see that he's just saying that to avoid a Shavuos Moida B'Mitzvahs, then Chayiv. You will still be mechayiv in a shvuos moida b'mitzvahs. But in b'mischaven, potter. But if he's just saying it because it's true and he's an honest guy and he wants to tell you what he owes, then it would be potter because it would not lead to a shvuos moida b'mitzvahs. Let's have a look. I believe it is from best, yeah. So let me see if I could find the Rashi. Here we are. Tanu Chitin v'Kadam v'Hoida B'Sayir. Misha Hayalei Litain Achaveri Chitnu Sayir. The claimant could have demanded both Chitin and Sayir because, in fact, he lent the fellow a bushel of Chitin and a bushel of Sayir. But for some reason, the Tanu Chitin, he only made a claim on the Chitin. And he didn't even mention Sayir at Shekadam Zeh v'Amar Chitin Ein Lach B'Yadi Abel Sayir Yesh Lach B'Yadi. So the respondent responded more than what he was asked to respond. Usually I tell you, just answer the question, don't talk too much. But in this case, talking too much was going to be to his benefit because it would help him avoid a shvuas to moedim b'mitzvos. So im kemarim, im nira lebezdin, shekofats lahoidois, kedei shalo yitanenu zeh sa'irin, and then v'yischayv lo shvua b'odah sa'irin. If Bezdin could tell the way this person is acting and answering, that he is just trying to game the law and avoid a shvuas to moedim b'mitzvos, they'll be mechayiv in the shvua anyway. Chayiv lo shvua im omar loy zeh shneim yeshli biyotcha. If the claimant says, "Yeah, the truth is you owe me this ha'urim as well," if he turns around and says that, but if him be mischavin lahoshav loy al teinasa shalchitin v'loy kekayvet, then he's potter. But if you can see he's just trying to be honest, then he will be potter. V'yomer Rabban Amar Shmuel. What about Tana Shnei Machtin? The claimant that you owe me 2 needles, worth barely a penny. V'hoida loy ba'achas mehen. And there was a moedim b'mitzvos. I agreed that I owed you 1 needle. Chayiv will be chayiv, even though there's no shtei mois, right? Rav said you need shtei mois and a pruta. Shmuel said you need shtei mois, but that's when you're talking about money. But when you're talking about a keli, it's a davar choshev in itself. Where do we know that from? Lefichach yatzu kelim l'mashahin. That's what the Torah said. Kesef oy kelim, because kesef has its set of rules. There's minimum amounts. But kelim, l'mashain, no matter what they are, a keli is a davar choshev because it is designed to accomplish something. Amar Papa, tanu kelim upruta. What if he was money him kelim and a pruta? The hoida bekelim, the kafar bepruta. So there was no kfir on kelim. There's only a kfir on a pruta. Potter, it will be potter. What about hoida bepruta, the kafar bekelim? What if you were moida on the pruta and you kafar on the kelim? Then you'll be chai. Now let's think about this case that we just learned. Would it be consistent with Shmuel or would it be consistent with Rav? So Shmuel, Rav said that the tviyah has to be a shtei mois plus a mashahu, right? And the denial has to be 2 mois, and the concession has to be the pruta. That's what Rav said. So let's look. We know that if it's a keli, the keli would stand in as a shtei mois, because by money you need the mois. It has to be worth a certain amount of money. But kelim are just like shtei mois, even though they're worth less, because kelim are independent. They stand alone. So therefore, let's look at this case again. Ta'anu kelim upruta. The haida bekelim, the kafar bepruta is potter. Why? Because according to Rav, you require a denial of shtei mois, or the kelim in lieu of the shtei mois. But a denial of a pruta is not enough to be mechayiv you a shvuas moedim b'miktas according to Rav. So that's why it's potter. But a haida bepruta, the cover bekelim. So when you cover the kelim, it's like you're being covered in the shtei ma. It would be chayiv. According to Shmuel, either way you would have been chayiv. Because Shmuel said the full claim has to be 2 mos, and the denial and the concession could be anywhere from a pruta up to the full amount. So of course this doesn't make sense according to Shmuel. This only makes sense according to Rav, and that's why the Gemara responds, or Papa responds, Chad Rav. First of all, this halacha, in order to justify it, you have to come on to Rav Shita. But v'chadok Shmuel, but you also have to come on to Shmuel Shita of Tanu Chitnu Soirin, v'hoidaloi be'echad man, that you're going to be chayiv, right? Because that was the case over here. So chadok Rav, the Amar Kviras Taina Ishtei Kesef, and that's why you needed the Kvira on the Kalim and the Haidah on the Pruta. And chadok Shmuel, but it also uses the Shita of Shmuel, the Amar Tanu Chitnu Soirin, v'hoidaloi be'achas man, would still be chayiv. Okay, Gavalta. Dr. Barbaiter. Mana li biyotcha. I claim that you owe me a mana. Ein lach biyadi, and the respondent is a koifer aklay. So Amar Nachman, even though there's no shvuah deraisa of a shvuas heses, nevertheless of a shvuas deraisa of a shvuas moedim b'mitzvos, nevertheless you do make him swear a shvuas heses. They do make him swear a shvua that's the Rabbanon, and this Shavuos Heses was not invented in the Mishnah. There is no mention of a Shavuos Heses in the Mishnah. This was invented in the times of the Gemara. Zokt Rashi, what is a Shavuos Heses? Rashi says, Loshen Shuma, Sheshamu Chachamim, Olav Shua. Or Shesamu, I think Shamu means they assessed upon him a Shua. Now, there's a difference in halacha as to how you swear Shavuos Heses. Like we learned yesterday or 2 days ago, that when you swear a regular shvua, you have to be holding on to a chevet shel mitzvah. We had a discussion of it has to be a sefer Torah, or it could even be tefillin, but you have to be holding on to a chevet shel mitzvah. A Shavuos Heses, you for sure don't have to swear over a sefer Torah. It's a plain shvua. My time, what is the reason why? Because some stranger comes and attacks me and claims I owe money. Why can't I just ignore him? The teretz is chazaka ein adam teveya el imkein yesh le'alav. Normal people don't run around making up fake accusations. Usually there's something to it. A lot of the rules of normalcy don't exist today. That's correct. Don't we have a chazaka ein adam meiz panav b'fnei bal chayvay? We had another chazaka that a defendant would never outright flatly deny that he owes money to his bal chayv. That's why he'll be moed b'mitzvahs, because he doesn't have the chutzpah to fully deny it. So why shouldn't that lend support to his response, and he shouldn't have to swear? So to Gemara, because maybe when he's denying it in full, he doesn't really mean to deny it in full. Rather, he doesn't have the money now, so he's denying it only until he can come up with the money. Ishtamutehu the kamishtamet. Maybe the loiva is denying that he owes it not because he doesn't intend to pay. It's because he doesn't have the money yet, and so for adahavali uparanale. I don't really mean to steal money from you. I plan on paying, but right now I don't have it. Teda, and I'll prove it to you that there's such a svara. The Omer of Idi, Bar Avid, Omer of Chista, HaKoifer b'milva. What if without a shavua? Reuben goes to Shimon and says, "You owe me $100,000," and Shimon says, "No, I don't owe you a penny." Kosher la'edus, Shimon will still be kosher la'edus, even though we know he lied. He owed 100,000 and he denied it. But b'pikadon pasal la'edus. If someone says, if Reuben goes to Shimon and says, "Can I have my Rolex that I gave you as a pikadon?" He's pasal la'edus, because by pikadon you can't say shtamitze. He's supposed to have it. It's supposed to be there, and therefore, if he denies that he has it, that's an outright lie, because you cannot justify ishtamitze. But you could justify ishtamitze if it's a milva. Now Rashi says that's only if they know for a fact that the watch is in his house. Because what if he lost the watch and he's also denying it till he can come up with it? Yeah, there it wouldn't be pasal edus. It's only if Adam said edus, I see it in your house. That's when we say he's pasal edus. Rabbi Chaviva Masna Aseifa. Rabbi Chaviva learned this same memra on the Seifa. Manali biyotcha, amar lehein, lamachar amar loy tineyuli. The next day he says, okay, yesterday in front of Adam, you owe me $100,000. Now please pay me the money. And then he says, Nesativ loch. The response was, I already paid you, Potter, because that's not a contradiction. I agree that I owed you and I paid you. Amar Rab Nachman, in that case, umashbi noises Shavuos Heses. So Rab Nachman said, no, we don't make him swear Shavuos Heses. If I'm a koy for a koil, when do I make a Shavuos Heses? When I already was moida that I owe you money, and now the question really is, did I pay you back or not? If you hold even by a total claim for a coil, you make him do a Shavuos Heses where there's no indication even that any money is owed. If we know money was owed and there's just a discussion of whether I paid back, surely there you would make a Shavuos Heses. However, uman demasni lay a seifa. But if someone only learns about the Shavuos Heses on the seifa where there was already an admission of some money that was owing, here, there's already a money case happening over here. There's already a discussion of money. We know money changed hands because we know that there was a loan that's been confirmed. But over there, that we have no reason to assume anything happened, there would not be the halacha of a Shavuos Heses. Okay, we finished a little bit early, Baruch Hashem. 6:40, and so we'll stop here, and maybe we'll have time to get ready for Shabbos this time. Oh, yeah.
Shkoyach.